All right, here we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Voino, and I lead International Good Deeds Day together with Kanan Rubino. Welcome to the next episode in the Good Deeds Day Facebook Live mini-series. In this series, we are having conversations with our partners all over the world about the projects being done during the corona pandemic and how their focus has shifted. And we'll be sharing tips for wherever you are around the world. So today I'm speaking with Nicole Cirillo, Executive Director of the International Association for Volunteer Effort, also known as IAVE. Nicole has extensive leadership, management, fundraising, and communications experience gained working with teams of staff and volunteers in different parts of the world. And she has led the engagement of a large network of global volunteers. Nicole, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Hannah. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to Good Deeds Day for this work. It's a really interesting series, and well,
I'm really excited to delve in and share our conversation live with our audience here. Before we get to it, I just want to share for whether you're joining us live right now or you're catching us at a later date, please say hi in the comments and let us know where you are in the world. And as we continue and have our conversation, feel free to ask questions if you want to know more about something going on with IAVE or you want some clarification or insight. Please do share. We would love to hear from you. So let's start off, Nicole. For those that are less familiar, can you share a bit about the work that IAVE is engaged in?
Absolutely. So first off, we're 50 years old. We have the delight to be celebrating our 50th year amongst all the other things that are going on, but we're very, very proud of that. And we're proud of our history, and we're looking forward to sort of the next chapter of what IAVE will become. But most of you probably know us from our convening. We have a biannual World Volunteering Conference that brings together volunteers from every sector, from every aspect of that work to celebrate, learn, and engage with one another. And again, that's where probably most people touch us. We also do regional convenings, but that convening pillar and that biannual World Volunteering Conference is probably one of our most popular methods of engagement and pillars to our work. But we also have three other pillars. There is our network engagement and network development. We have a global network of volunteer leaders, so people at the national and regional level of their countries and regions who are engaged in supporting and building the capacity of volunteering within their region or country. We have that network that IAVE is dedicated to bringing together and providing support and knowledge and capacity building for. We also have a global corporate volunteering council, so for major corporations around the world who really do engage in employee engagement through volunteering to help them again learn, build their own practice, and better be able to engage with NGOs on the ground. So that's our network pillar. We also engage in knowledge development. So we do research. Right now we have a very large corporate research study going on, but we do that type of research and knowledge development that advances the field and the craft and the practice of volunteering. And then the fourth pillar of our work is advocacy. We're engaged in what we call grass tops advocacy. So working with the United Nations volunteers, IFRC, the International Federation of the Red Cross, Red Crescent, et cetera, to really build that global framework and global appreciation for volunteering. But we also work on the ground, and this is really, really key and really, really important to make sure that we can codify and support that volunteering at the local level, because we always have to remember that in certain parts of the world, in fact, unfortunately, many parts of the world, it isn't necessarily always welcome to be a volunteer or to be organizing as volunteers. So IAVE is always on the lookout for that grassroots and that grass tops leadership and advocacy around volunteering. So those are the 4 pillars of our work. And as Hannah said, we certainly are be delighted to answer any questions, or Hannah, take the conversation in any way you'd like in our time together now.
Great. Well, thank you for that overview. Speaking of the knowledge base of what the network and IAVE really holds, at the end of March, you guys began hosting practical webinars that ended up drawing in hundreds of people. Can you share with us a bit about how did you arrive at that decision as COVID was spreading, how you made that decision, and what the practical webinars look like?
Yes, so a lot of us are doing webinars, right? We're doing webinars in a variety of forms. That's the new normal at this point, and I suspect it will continue far after we return to safety and security post-COVID-19. But in the wake, and I recollect days, we started when it hadn't we hadn't quite formulated our response like a lot of people. We just started listening, and I would encourage anyone to always start there, right? Listen to what people are telling you they need, and what that came through very strongly is people were needing really practical hands-on skills that they could turn around and use the next day in their programming. I think there is certainly a value to the sharing of stories and the sharing of worries and fears and getting that out. But we very much focus on those actionable things that people, actionable ideas and tips that people could turn around and use. So was on the volunteers this time. That was one of the different networks, both corporate and NGO networks of volunteering organizations.
We lost you for just a moment. So can you share? You were starting to say about the first ones you were hosting.
Yeah, the first ones we were hosting focused on that safety and security and of volunteers. That's what we were saying. To keep their volunteers safe. If you'll remember, in those early days, there was a lot of confusion globally about what was safe and what not. Do I wear a mask? Do I wear gloves, etc.? So that was our first webinar, was around how do you keep volunteers safe and secure. We also then preceded that with a webinar about digitals. How do you transition to digital volunteering? A lot of people had questions on that. How to engage youth, and also what was the front line of this pandemic? People in Asia who had first dealt with this. They were 3 to 4 months in when the rest of the world was just starting. What lessons did they have? What practical advice did they have? So again, that gives you a bit of a flavor for what that first set of webinars was about, and how we continue to do that spirit of really practical, actionable content.
And who was the audience? I mean, who are you trying to reach through these webinars?
It's a really good question. So we made sure we kept them open. We would love you to become an IAVE member, but that's not to participate. So what we found was we had a wide variety of people joining. We had people who were volunteers locally, in all across the world. I think we had over 120 countries represented. So people from the front lines doing soup kitchens and really helping to do really basic medical and health and safety response, to leadership organizations, to corporations who were trying to figure out how they were going to engage their organizations in this, to philanthropy, to government. Literally every walk of life and globally was represented on these calls, on these webinars, and still is to this day.
That's great. And these webinars they're still on your website. I was looking through IAVE's newest section on the COVID-19 response, and I saw that anyone can go back and see one of the previous webinars.
Indeed, indeed. Those will reside on our website as in perpetuity, or at least until we feel like the need has been met for that knowledge. And Hannah, absolutely, got some really exciting ones coming up, I have to say. So I would encourage everyone to go to IAVE, that's IAVE.org. Immediately a pop-up will appear on your screen with COVID-19. Just click that, it'll take you right there. So I would encourage people to explore all of these. But coming up, we continue to have interesting webinars about how to do volunteering in conflict areas, what that looks like, and the particular challenges that circumstance has. And then also looking at basically storytelling, and how storytelling can actually help you define and improve and scale your social impact. So stay tuned for those. I think they'll be quite interesting.
That's great. I love that you guys are doing one specifically on storytelling, because for Good Deeds Day, I mean, for the network and for the folks that are part of it, that's a huge component of talking about our work is sharing the story, inspiring others, and continuing that work. And so I think that's a very vital piece too of creating a better world, whether we're right now in the midst of a pandemic or even later on. It's a crucial piece. So that's great. I'm happy to hear that.
And I think so as well. And I think, look, we can tell stories in a variety of different ways. We can tell stories through images. We can tell stories through words. We can tell stories through data, right? I think it's the old form of human connection. Imagine us, by the fire, hearing about one another's stories. It's really, really important. And I know that data is really important. And I'm somebody who really always strives for how do we demonstrate our impact, right? But we also have to remember the narrative is really important too, because that's what moves the heart, right? When you hear stories about numbers, right? How many people have been served, or how many people have moved up in a spectrum of caring through a particular program, that's really important, right? But so is it when somebody says to you, you know what, I felt really energized today about the volunteering work I did. And that almost piques your interest a little bit more. It certainly does me, than reading a lot of data. And again, I don't mean to dismiss the importance of data. That's hugely important. But sometimes we focus on data, and we forget the power of that narrative. And we forget how moving and compelling that narrative is. And I think, if there are any people in your audience who are particularly philanthropy or helping to support volunteers, I would encourage you to really seek and ask for that narrative version of the impact that that volunteering makes on and good works and service has on society as a whole.
Absolutely. I definitely agree, because the storytelling piece injects that personal piece as well. And that's what we often miss when we're talking about statistics and when we're talking about research. So thank you very much for that and for doing that. I think that's interesting, and we will certainly link here in the comments the website and that section on webinars so that people can find that easily. When we were chatting last week, you were sharing with me that one of the components to the webinar, if people would like to take part, is the complimentary COVID-19 Volunteer Ambassador Program. Tell us a bit about what that is and how people can be involved in that.
Yeah, thank you. So again, we were hearing from people that, I want to volunteer, I have experience, but, having this certification really will help me. It'll help me understand the health and safety, or it'll help me understand the context of it, but it'll also help me substantiate the act of volunteering through this certification process. So we decided to implement that. It's quite easy. It's free. You attend this webinar. Afterwards, if you want to become an IAVE COVID-19 volunteer ambassador, just click the certification link. It'll ask you a series of questions that are pertinent to the webinar you've just heard. And then if you get those questions correctly, if you've captured that information, you'll be sent a certificate with your name on it in that particular webinar. And you can use that as you to help you in your own community, again, substantiate volunteering, but also your own role. So just an abundance of participation. So I can think already and tell you already that it'll more than likely be an element in the webinars that we do in the future. And we're really just happy to provide that service.
That's great. And so this is a certification that people can get after they've listened intently to the webinar and answered the questions about it. And so how have people been using this kind of certificate or knowledge? I mean, what have you seen?
Well, we just launched it, really. So, but I think your question is a really good one. I want to hear the answers to that question. How is this helping people? So, again, anybody in the audience, if you do that certification, absolutely do tell us how that's helped you, because we want to understand those ways so that we can build programs around that, servicing that need. But again, I think, one of the things that I've heard is that having this certification, proving that you've taken this webinar, that you've gone to your own time and your own trouble to take the time to become educated, to become an ambassador, or to become educated on this variety of topics, just does allow you to demonstrate through the certification that you've amassed this knowledge. And I wouldn't call you an expert. It would take a lifetime, right, to become an expert on these, but that you have a certain level of entry knowledge on this, and that you're able to answer basic questions and to participate more fully in your community in volunteering as part of this pandemic.
Absolutely. And I think what you guys are really giving people is a way to, and it's in the series, it's a practical webinar, and you're really aiming to give some skills, some needed knowledge right now that people can use and apply. And I think that the certificate and that aspect is just a creative way on your end that you guys came up with to engage people. And so today, with in the last few months with COVID-19 and people working from home, and there's so much going on online, that as you guys found your place and what knowledge are you bringing and where's your place in that, I think this way of giving something practical, very knowledge focused and actionable that people can then take and run within their communities, because it's all very very relevant for right now.
Yeah. And they're designed to be flexible. It isn't IAVE's role to tell you what, or even, it's not even within our knowledge base to be able to understand what's happening on the ground, right? And if there's one lesson that we're learning, is that this pandemic is playing out very differently in very different places. So this certificate is a set of tools that you can then use, or is demonstrative of knowledge that you can then use in your community to turn that into those practical steps and tools to make you a better volunteer, to understand how to keep you safe, to understand how to convert a digital program, to understand resiliency or sustainable development goals and volunteering in a new and different way.
Let's talk a bit about corporates and the Corporate Volunteer Council that you've recently convened. First, what did that look like, and what does that look like right now, engaging the different corporate members?
No, that's a good question. So it is very much a knowledge sharing group, and I've been taught not to say necessarily best practices, but inspiring practices. And in that group, we share those inspiring practices about how to engage employees as volunteers globally. And really, I'm going to say something even more important, which is how to partner. How do you partner with organizations on the ground? How do you be an effective partner? How do you be a supportive partner? And so it's both kind of internal and external, right? How do you engage your employees? How do you make meaningful difference? But then again, how do you partner effectively with nonprofit organizations or organizations globally to meet those needs? So it's a really dynamic group. It's a very active group. It's really targeted at corporations that are in 3 or more countries globally. So these are global corporations, and corporations who either are interested in, or again, already have volunteering programs that are a part of their mission, a part of how they see themselves in the world, and how they see their purpose statement or their unique sort of selling proposition, and their corporate citizenship. So it's been a really for me, entering IAVE in October, it's been a really interesting journey to see how that COVID-19 has really deepened that commitment from corporations, but also how they're struggling like everyone else to figure out how to continue these programs in this era of social and physical distancing. And again, the inspiring practices that are coming out about that.
So maybe it's a bit premature now since it's really just begun, but have you seen anything, or has there been any chatter within this group around how to best partner with organizations on the ground during this pandemic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we are learning those lessons as we speak. I think, I think so we will have a better understanding of that at a future point in time. But I think, to me, what I've heard is, first of all, they're deepening their relationships with existing partners. So the partnerships that they had in place, they're not out looking for a lot of new partnerships right now. They're making the commitment to stand by these partners and give these partners what they need now. They're also deepening that relationship in terms of perhaps thinking about their investment in those partners either being more generous or not having a lot of expectations around deliverables in those partnerships. And I think we're seeing that across philanthropy, right? We're just basically loosening our requirements, or some of the information we might require of a grantee in this particular time, in order to just make the process of delivery of resources easier for people who are completely absorbed with responding to on the ground. And I think we're seeing that in our corporate partners too, not only sticking with the partnerships that they've already created, but deepening those and recognizing that they need to deepen their support and make it easy for those partnerships to receive that deepened support. The third thing that I would say is going on that journey with the partner. So instead of going to the partner and say, hey, we want to do digital, what have you got for us? What have you got? You know, all of our employees are at home. We want to engage them digitally. Help us engage with you digitally. It's more of that, what can we do together, and what fits with you, nonprofit organization, or what fits with you on the ground, and that would meet your needs in a genuine way, but also not create a burden of you having to suddenly have 100 or 200 global employees that you need to, or global employees that you need to engage. So that sense of that journey of partnership of what can we do meaningfully together.
And I think that that's something that we need to be asking both year round, but especially now as organizations are under-resourced, understaffed. Now this is really the time to do the process together and to see that symbiotic relationship, as opposed to employees are home, and the company wants to engage them in some type of volunteer work virtually. This is what we want to do. It really needs to come from the needs of the organization and what can they do together. I think that's a very important point that you just spoke to.
Hannah, I can't say that enough. Look, I've worked both in the private sector and I've worked in nonprofits. I've been a grantor, money away. And the best partnerships that I've ever had are the ones when those people come to me with just as much to give as they have to receive. And I think there's this expression that I use that I learned when I worked in human rights and working with grantees in human rights, is that we insist on eye-to-eye partnerships, right? That we look each other in the eye, that again, I'm giving, or I'm receiving perhaps a financial remuneration from you, but I'm also allowing you to live out your corporate values, your social responsibility values, to engage with your employee workforce globally, to demonstrate those values to your employees. Oh my goodness, the list goes on, right, of the best. I really agree with you, and I think often nonprofits shy away from that eye to eye, but I absolutely have a strong partner, and again with that sense of eye to eye partnership with your corporate partner.
And to that point, from the nonprofit side, I think definitely, you would encourage people to, from the nonprofit side, to really have those conversations with your corporate partners, especially now as corporates are really doubling down and focusing only on their NGOs in which they've already had a pre-existing relationship. So now is a great time to build upon that and have those conversations on how you can partner together.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I want to give a shout out to corporations, because I think that shifted a lot, right? I think in the old days of corporate social responsibility, it very much was, here's the check, here's the picture of you and I think I'm speaking globally here. Here's the check, here's the picture of me giving you the check, and that's it. But that has changed dramatically, right? And it's much more of that. How do we demonstrate our commitment and our social and our values through partnership with particular nonprofit organizations? So absolutely, I think that the time is ripe but I think it's ripe on both sides. I think corporations are keen and eager to have those type of relationships that really do advance their social commitments, and also make them better corporations globally. Again, when I was in that role, I was always interested in the nonprofit partnership that was going to do my job that much more, with that much greater a degree of social responsibility. So absolutely, the time is ripe, and I think both parties are ripe to have that kind of conversation and that type of relationship.
Absolutely. I'd love to shift to hearing a bit more about the regional and national leadership for the volunteer network that I know that is a big part of IAVE and what you guys are working on right now. Can you share a bit about that?
Absolutely, I'd be delighted to. So we have had, I would say, a formal and informal relationship with close to 140 different organizations and nationally, so within their countries, that are helping to build volunteering infrastructure, right? So organizations in all those countries that are helping build capacity, helping other volunteering on the ground organizations through knowledge development, capacity building, et cetera. And we've had this relationship with them for in fact, all of our existence. But we've moved that into a formal network, and it's called the GNVL, the Global Network of Volunteering Leaders. So again, if you go on our website, you will see this. It is our steadfast belief that you get more done together than you do alone. It is also IAVE's steadfast belief that we are not the front line of this, excuse me, and we want to make sure we are doing everything we can to strengthen and build the capacity of this network to go on and do the work within their country or region of strengthening volunteering. So this network kicked off in the new year. It did kick off right before the pandemic, or before it became widespread and in everyone's consciousness. But we decided to pursue it because we felt more than ever this network is needed. So again, if you go to our website, you'll see how to join. You'll see the benefits of joining. Basically, our commitment is to driving and developing capacity of these leaders through a range of mentoring services, grants, knowledge, toolkits, etc., a range of programming that will build their capacity, both as organizations and themselves as leaders. Because again, IAVE believes that there are, the way to do this is in this network and collaborating with people globally who are closest to volunteering in their country. So we're just delighted about this. It's kicked off, but it is absolutely running, and we'd be happy to answer any questions about that or talk to you or join the network.
So this is an opportunity, a potential leadership opportunity for folks that are really working on the ground in communities and addressing the local issues.
It's actually for organizations that are working more at the regional or national level. So it's not necessarily the organization that is the soup kitchen in their community. Mm-hmm. It's for the organizations that are working regionally and nationally to convene the on the ground volunteering organizations, so that they can help build that leadership and support in their region and in their country.
Okay, so for those that are working on a larger scale level, regional level, this could be a potential opportunity.
Absolutely, definitely.
Wonderful.
Definitely.
So what other ways is IAVE working to kind of engage the network? I know you've got, we as Ruach Tova based in Israel are part of the IAVE network. A lot of people that are part of the Good Deeds Day network are also involved in IAVE. So what are the ways in which IAVE is engaging and continuing to engage people around the world?
Through this network. So, we had a long list of things, and you'll see those if you go to our offerings, we've called them, that we're committed to. And then COVID-19 came, and we had to pivot a little bit into these webinars and into a grant fund and into this certification program. So certainly, that developing knowledge of the network is a key part that will continue. And, some of these, really since we're trying to build a network, they will be network only events, right? And let me give you just an example. That storytelling webinar that I mentioned to you that we're going to be doing. For our networks, we're going to be doing a master class of that, for example. So not just a 40-minute or 30-minute webinar, but 2 to 3 sessions over a period that dive deeper and allow them to really understand storytelling for social impact in a much deeper way. So that, webinars and toolkits like that allow them to sharpen their skills. We're also going to be offering mentoring and really kind of talking through issues, challenges as leaders. We are going to be developing a number of different aspects there and examining a fellowship program, et cetera, a grant program. We haven't really, again, evolved either of those ideas too much, those last 2 ideas too much, because of the focus on COVID-19. But also, I think just bringing people together. I think one of the things we found at IAVE, at our regional convenings, et cetera, our biennial, is just being with like-minded individuals who understand you and understand the value of volunteering is such an important aspect to any network, right? You can feel alone, ending. I don't know how to do this. But suddenly when you're within a network of people just like you just, and you feel like you've got the support that you need, and you can take a deep breath and you can learn and share. So we will be doing, so just that network effect, as it's called, is a really important aspect of this. And of course, I just want to end by saying this. We've gotten our groove with our COVID-19 response. We are going to be turning to that network and really asking that network, what is it that you need from us most right now? What is it as leaders in your region or your country that you feel like you need to be better, to do better, and to have a greater voice for volunteering in the future?
Great. Well, those sound like some good plans that are going to be rolling out this year. And I know I'm excited to see how we can be part of that and how others as well can kind of take advantage of this network, because as we're forced online, I think people are really finding unique ways to connect. So that'll be interesting. And we have a question from someone watching. You had mentioned the grants. I'm not sure if that's still something you're doing, but Koku from Togo asks, what are the conditions that an organization or a IAVE member must fulfill to qualify for the IAVE COVID-19 grant?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for your question. Again, if you go to our website, it's all there. But again, as I said, we're trying to be quite not impose a lot of restrictions. We basically want you to be, we'd love it if you were part of our network and part of this global network, volunteer leaders. We would love that for starters, but we would also, just trust that you're genuinely engaged in volunteering in your community, and that this is, that you provide an idea of how you might spend this money. It is a micro grant, right? And it's just really designed to be rather nimble and to be able to provide that quickly.
So you can find more information on their website. And I want to first say hi to those that are watching in the audience, and a special shout out. We've got two IAVE and Good Deeds Day members here. We've got Joyce from South Korea, and we've got Elsie from Hong Kong. So I want to just acknowledge them, and also Sekimana from Rwanda. So as I'm seeing, as people are saying hello and where they're from, so it's really great to see people joining us from all over the world. And so we've got a little bit of more time here, and I'd love to hear a bit, especially right now as companies are and have been for the last few months figuring out how to switch to working remotely. For you guys, it's basically business as usual. IAVE is a remote organization. You've got a staff in the US, and you've got partners around the world. And while countries are starting to slowly open up, people are continuing to work from home a bit. So I'm wondering if you have any insight, Nicole, and recommendations on this process of working virtually with teams and kind of how to adjust to this new reality.
Absolutely. And we have staff in Latin America, and we have in the UK as well. We're fortunate in that we are a global remote organization. So I think, just some tips, and this is something that I think even if you are already remote, it was an early piece of advice that I've heard, and I hear consistently, is don't hide, right? That you may want to just sort of like go and just not want to bother anybody. But that's in fact the opposite of what you need to be doing as leaders, as team members, as for your constituents. It is so important that you communicate, that you get on a phone, an internet connection, wherever, and you talk to your team, you talk to your members, you talk to people. You don't have to have all the answers, right? No one is expected to have all the answers, but you do have to demonstrate an openness, and you do have to demonstrate, you have to open those channels of communication. So that would be my first piece of advice, right? As a team members, make sure you're establishing those weekly calls, bi-weekly calls, that time that you're really setting aside to communicate. And again, that goes for all of us. That goes for how you communicate with funders or how you communicate with your partners, etc. Just communicate. Not be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers, but you do have to make sure you're actively communicating. Obviously, and this is sort of like a standard tip, it really helps to physically see one another. So if your internet connectivity supports it, if it's something that you can do even for the first 5 minutes of the call or even the last 5 minutes, make sure that you're able to physically see one another. That really, really helps. And I would say, don't forget to be human, right? Don't forget to ask one another how you're doing. I always try and start calls like that. How are you, right? And spend a few minutes talking about how you are. These are such unusual times. My mother-in-law is 96 years old, and she's never witnessed anything like this. So that tells you the historic, somebody who's almost 100 years old, the historic. So ask everyone, don't afraid to do that. I would also say, with yourself, right? Sometimes your motivation lags. If you're not used to working remotely, you can be distracted. Set yourself a couple key goals every day for yourself, for your team, and focus on those. And if you can get those done, celebrate it and just start the next day. It's hard doing this if you're not, well, first of all, it's hard period. It's difficult period. And if you're, if you're isolated, or if you're by yourself, or not necessarily used to working in this manner, again, just be gentle with yourself. Set a couple of those key goals, accomplish them, and then just end on a high note, start the next day. So that would just be a few things that I would offer to anyone who's transitioning to this environment of remote working.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think just especially, the one tip you had on just being kind of gentle with ourselves in these, unprecedented times, even for your, 90-year-old mother. It's these are very different times, and we need to understand that and take it all with a grain of salt. We're all adapting in different ways. And I love your tip too on just trying to accomplish just a couple things for that day. Especially in this day and age, we want to be Energizer bunnies, super productive all the time, working hard, and people are really working hard right now, especially right now with a lot going on. But we also need to remember that not all days will be as productive as the last day, and that's okay.
Exactly.
And we'll just pick it up the next day and start from there. So those are great reminders to keep it all in perspective and be gentle with ourselves, and make sure you've got FaceTime. I know probably Zoom is doing so great as a company now, with everyone logging on and FaceTime, and finding those ways to connect to your team and people, and make sure you're getting that face-to-face time. So grateful. So thank you for that. And I'm excited to see all these plans unravel and pan out, right now and throughout the year. And we're excited to partner with you guys throughout the year and continue to do so.
Wonderful. Yes, I'm very excited about that as well. And seeing how the future unravels for all of us. And being open to the lessons that COVID-19 and this pandemic is teaching us, right? That's another thing is, don't necessarily need to stick to your playbook or the plans that you had in January or December when you were thinking about what you wanted to accomplish in 2020. That's kind of amusing to even think about right now, right? So I would encourage people to be open to new ideas and to really take the time now to think about that and how their work needs to change in light of this pandemic.
Absolutely. I think now is a great time to pause and reflect on the work that we're all doing, and how we want to continue doing so. So Nicole, thank you very much for this conversation and for shedding a lot of light and insights. And we'll be sharing the links here on the chat for people to find out more information. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Thank you, Hannah, Stephanie, and thank you to everyone in the audience. And keep going onwards. We'll get there. Thank you so much for your time and your work.
Thank you. And for those that are still with us, tune in next Monday, May 18th at 4 o'clock Singapore time. We're going to have a different kind of interview, and I'm personally really excited about it. We're going to be chatting about mental health and how to cope during COVID-19 with James Lynn. So that'll be a conversation that is going to certainly be relevant for everybody. So I encourage you all to join us, to meet us back here on Monday at 4 o'clock Singapore time. And thank you very much.
Thank you.